This woman died after they injected chicken noodle soup into her veins. The woman pictured behind me is Ilda Maciel of Brazil. Apparently one of the nurses injected chicken noodle soup into her veins instead of a feeding tube. I really don't know how you can mess it up that bad, but somehow somebody did it. This woman was 88 years old. It's noted that she started to squirm and stick her tongue out after the chicken noodle soup was injected into her. Her daughter reported she had never seen her mother in such excruciating pain, and Maciel died just 12 hours after the chicken noodle soup was injected into her body. This happened in 2012, and the family ended up suing them. The hospital CEO admitted this was wrong, but takes no fault in the patient's death. Now that is just crazy. She got a pulmonary embolism shortly after it was injected into her, and they believe that's the cause of death. This happened back in 2012. I can't find any information regarding the lawsuit. So if you guys have any information on if the family won or if they lost, please let me know in the comment section. Very unfortunate and sad story for this elderly woman. What do you guys think about this story, and what would you do in this situation?
Alafia! My name is Oshun. On this channel, we uncover the creepiest, most unusual haunted TikToks the internet has to offer for entertainment purposes. Y'all are my soul tribe. Tribe is with a Y because the Y is for you, and that's because I love you so freaking much. Please like, comment, and subscribe to your soul tribe for your weekly dose of supernatural coming to you every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursdays. Now, I'm not gonna waste a minute of your time. Let's get to this next video. Hey y'all, it's me, the money professor. Come closer, come closer. I want to tell you about an account that millionaires and billionaires have been leveraging for multiple decades to build tax-free riches. Guess what? So can you. Seriously, you can. Watch. It's called an IUL, uninterrupted compound interest. IUL stands for Index Universal Life Insurance Policy, but it's an uninterrupted compound interest. First of all, you're never going to lose a single penny when the market crashes because you are protected by a 0% floor. With that being said, this account only allows you to participate in the upside of the market. That's guaranteed money. Third, it allows you to build tax-free retirement income for the rest of your life and leave a freaking legacy for your family. Connect with me now to find out if you qualify. Yes, you have to qualify. Connect with me now. Hit the link. Hey y'all, I'm the money professor. The government hates to tell us how to create generational wealth, how to grow our money tax-free, and how to get out of debt. But what if I told you life insurance was the answer? Would you believe me? That's why so many of my people stay in poverty and end up working until they die. We run away from the thought of life insurance because we were programmed to think only about death insurance. In reality, life insurance is the only vehicle where you can create generational wealth, grow your money tax-free, and have a retirement plan all in one, as well as life insurance. Don't let the government fool you. Life insurance is for the living. That's why it's called life insurance and not death insurance.
This spooky story submission is actually so terrifying that it led to the person who was telling me the story to end up in the hospital because of this. So for the story, we're going to call her Danielle, and I'm going to tag her below. We're calling her Danielle because that's what her childhood friends and her family used to call her. So until Danielle was about 14 or 15 years old, she lived on 78 acres of land. She said that in that 78 acres of land, only about 3 other people lived on that land. So it was a pretty secluded area, and Danielle really liked to play outside. That was her favorite thing to do. Loved watching the deers, the rabbits, but her favorite was climbing trees. Something that really bothered her though is that her mother would never let her play outside after dark, and we're talking like not even after the sunset, as the sun started setting. She didn't like this, but she obviously obeyed it because it was her mother, and so she had to. Until one day, her mother decides that she is going to go out to a friend's house, and Danielle doesn't want to go with her. But if Danielle doesn't go with her, it means that she's going to be left alone. Her and her mother decide that this is okay and that Danielle is old enough to handle this, so she stays home alone, and her mom leaves at about 3 p.m. Danielle decides that she's going to go outside and she's going to play in the woods. She said that she was outside climbing trees when she felt this overwhelming feeling of being watched. It was overwhelming, and it felt like it was coming from above her. But she keeps looking up, and she's not seeing anything, so she's thinking that maybe her mind mind's just playing tricks on her, and she kind of shrugs it off. At some point, it starts to get dark, and she knows that she's supposed to go home, but she doesn't want to go home, and she's home alone, so she can do what she wants. So she decides that she's going to stay outside. At around 7:30 p.m., when the sun had already set, she starts hearing a noise, and it's her mother calling her name. She's calling for her to come home. So Danielle is like, oh crap, I gotta get home. So she starts walking home, but she still has this overwhelming feeling of being watched. When all of a sudden, she starts hearing twigs and leaves snapping behind her. So she looks behind her, but she doesn't see anything. She finally gets home, and she realizes that her mom is not home. So while she's outside, she calls her mom, and she's like, Mom, were you home? Like, I just heard you calling my name. And her mom was like, I have not been home this entire time. I'm still at my friend's house. She said this really freaked her out, and she decided to turn around and look in the woods, and she looked over, and she sees a dark figure standing outside in the woods. This freaks her out, so she runs inside, she slams the door, and she deadbolts it shut. She then goes over to the window, and she looks outside of her blinds to see if it's still there, and of course it is not there. She again decides that she's going to shrug this off. Maybe her eyes are just playing tricks on her, and she decides to make dinner. This feeling of being watched, this overwhelming feeling, follows her until the morning. And she said that she didn't feel like she was being watched by one thing, she felt like she was being watched by like several things. She decides to go to her camera because they have cameras in the house, and there's a new video popped up, and I'm assuming that they were motion censored. It didn't say in the email, but she did say that there was a new video, so she looks at it and she doesn't see anything, but she hears this tapping sound on their front door. It's important to note right now that their front door is a big metal door that her mom had put in when they very first moved in. Nothing is on the camera, she cannot see anything, so she decides that she's gonna go outside and she's gonna look at the door. Outside on the door, there are huge claw marks on this metal big door. She said that she then realized that this could not have been an animal, because if it was an animal, number one, why is it trying to get into her house? And number two, how could it make these claw marks on this big metal door her mom had installed? So this really freaked her out. So I think her way of just coping with things was just shrugging it off. So she does just that, and she goes out in the woods again, and around 7:50 p.m. she's playing in the tree, climbing it again, and she gets that overwhelming feeling again. This feeling again is feeling like it's coming from above. So she decides to look above her again, and what she saw was terrifying. She said that she looked up, and when she looked up, she saw the most demonic figure she had ever seen in her life looking at her. Not only was it looking at her, but it was calling her name, her real name, not Danielle, her real name. But not only was it calling her name, it was in her mother's voice again. Danielle is absolutely terrified at this, and she starts bolting home, and the entire time she's running home, she can hear this thing running after her. She calls her mother on her way home, and she was absolutely bawling her eyes out. Her mom gets home, and she assures her that it's nothing, and that everything is going to be okay, and that it's not a big deal, and that she was probably just seeing things. Danielle did say that this experience was so distraught to her and scared her so badly that she actually ended up being hospitalized for 2 or 3 months because of it. She said she couldn't eat, sleep, drink, nothing. The crazy thing about this is that this is not even the only thing that happened to Danielle. Something else happened to her that even traumatized her further. This is getting really long, so I'm gonna have to make a part 2 on it. If you guys want to hear that second part, that partly also contributed to her being in the hospital, then drop it in the comments and I will make a part 2 and tell you guys that story. That story is even scarier. So what do you guys think of this? What do you guys think this was? Like, this terrified her so much that she's still in therapy to this day. And the second thing that happened to her definitely didn't help at all. So drop in the comments for part 2. Also, if you guys have anything to say to her or anything to like help her feel better, please also drop that in the comments. She could use all the love and support that she could get right now. She is going to see it. I am going to tag her. Thank you.
Go ahead, Kaisa. Thank you for the story. Danielle, honey, yes, ma'am. We believe you over here at the Soul Tribe. It sucks when those experiences happen and you confide in people who you trust in and, you know, hope to trust that you are not crazy. And unfortunately, it, you know, has an opposite effect. But stay strong and keep praying, and I hope it gets better for you.
Alright guys, so this is part 2 of my scary, creepy story time about how I was stalked from the time I was 14 until I was up in my late 20s. And I just wanted to remind you guys to give me a follow, and if you have any scary, creepy stories that you want to share, my inbox is always open, and I will share them on here. And if you wish to remain anonymous, we can make that happen too. So I left off talking about what and all happened when I was around 16 or 17 years old. I had just started dating a boy who was within walking distance of my house, and I had been walking up there to see him later in the evenings and sometimes at night. My grandma would get really upset whenever I would take off, especially whenever I didn't let her know, because, like I said, there was still evidence that the person had been hanging around the house, even though we hadn't actually seen him in a while. And we didn't really know what this person's intentions were, but obviously they wasn't good. But at this point in time, I was so angry and just aggravated with living in fear of this person and what they may be capable of that I just didn't even care anymore. So one particular night, I'm walking back from my boyfriend's. It was in the middle of summer and I wasn't in school, so I was there pretty late. I'm thinking this had to be around 2 a.m., so that means my grandma was already in bed. The walk was going fine until I got this really uneasy feeling that someone was watching me. I stopped for a second and looked around and seen no evidence of anybody being there. But because I still had the uneasy feeling, I started walking a little bit faster towards my house. And that's when I started hearing sticks breaking coming from behind me in the wooded area. I stop and I look behind me, and someone was coming out of this wooded area wearing a dark colored hoodie, and it was a tall and slender man, just like I had described seeing around my house and at my window. I take off running towards the house and I start feeling around in my pockets to make sure that I have my key ready and available, that way I can get inside as quickly as I possibly can. This person starts picking up their pace, walking quickly towards me while I'm running towards the door. Thank God I was able to make it inside before the person was able to make it to me, because still to this day, I'm not sure what his intentions were. I get inside, I quickly lock the door, and I start screaming for my mama to get her pew-pew. I look out the window, and he's just standing in the driveway, staring at the house. I turned around to see what was taking my grandma so long, which was she was loading the pew-pew, and by the time she made it to the window, the guy was gone. He had done run back into the wooded area. At this point, my mama gets really frustrated and upset and don't know what to do, because we cannot figure out who this person is because we've not actually seen his face. She's so fed up that she finally calls and makes a police report, because this was the first time that the person had tried to actually approach me. The police informed her that because she don't have the identity of the person, there's not much that they can do about it, that they would suggest just keeping an eye out on me. And that if anything else happens, that she could call them back if she could figure out who the person was, or if the person tried anything else. A couple weeks go by and I'm outside trying to clean up around the yard. This is in the middle of the day. I decide that I'm going to walk towards the wooded area and just, because I seen some garbage laying, and I was going to go pick it up and help my mama clean up the yard. Fast forward quite some time, and I'm outside picking up around the property. I was out there just trying to clean and straighten up around the house. I walk over to the wooded area because I see something that appears to be a piece of garbage. I go to pick it up, and it's an envelope, and you can tell that it had been there for quite some time because it was wet and muddy and dirty. But what was inside of the envelope almost made me want to throw up. It was multiple Polaroid pictures of me from throughout the years. Just sitting inside of the house, watching TV, walking down the road, even pictures of me changing clothes. And like I said, it was several pictures, and it was from throughout the years. In a lot of the pictures, it was obvious that the pictures had been taken from outside of the window and from the wooded area. Finally, I get old enough to where I'm driving and eventually move out of my grandmother's house. I move up the road about 10 minutes away in a set of apartments. Everything seems to be quiet. Nothing really seems to be going on for quite some time until strange things started happening, such as my brake lines being cut, my car being keyed, and just some other strange things around where I was living. I brushed it off thinking that maybe it was just someone who didn't like me, or maybe it was the kids from around the apartments. But unfortunately, I was wrong. At this point in time, I was pregnant with my first child, and I was sitting on the couch watching TV when I noticed the knob on my apartment door starts jiggling. Thankfully, I had not only the door locked, but also the deadbolt locked. I hurry up and grab my phone and call 911. By the time they got there was nobody there. Strange things kept happening all the way up until I was in my late 20s. I would look outside and see the silhouette of a tall, slender man standing on the railroad tracks across from my apartment, peering at my apartment. I eventually moved further away and things finally stopped. But these scary, creepy things happened to me from the time that I was a 14-year-old kid all the way up until I was, I'm going to guess, around 25. I lived in constant fear of what this person's intentions towards me was. And to this day, my grandmother still don't understand neither. But that will conclude my scary, creepy story time. Like I said to you guys before, if you have any scary, creepy stories that you want to share with me, whether it's, something like what I just shared with you guys, or something paranormal, send them to me, that way I can share them. I was never able to figure out who this person was or what they wanted, but I'm so happy that these things have stopped. What time I lived at those apartments with my children, I got multiple reports from different neighbors about a man lingering around my apartment. But anyways, I would love to hear your guys' stories. If you've got a good one, make sure you inbox me, that way I can share it. You all have a lovely night, and I will catch you during the next scary, creepy story time.
Yeah.
out to be her killers. This is the heartbreaking story of Jennifer Daugherty. Jennifer was a kind-hearted 30-year-old woman with developmental disabilities who trusted easily. In 2010, she was invited to an apartment in Greensburg, Pennsylvania by people she considered friends. What happened next was pure horror. For over 36 hours, Jennifer was tortured, beaten, humiliated, and poisoned. They forced her to write a fake suicide note before stabbing her to death and discarding her body in a trash can. Melvin Knight and Ricky Smearns were sentenced to death. Angela Marinucci received 60 years to life. Amber Madinger was sentenced to 40 to 80 years. Peggy Miller to 35 to 74 years. And Robert Masters Jr. received 30 to 70 years in.
I remember when that happened. I actually am from not Greensburg, but it's a outside neighborhood of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I didn't live far from that area. And I remember when that happened, it was so sad. It was all over the news and just disgusting. They all need to burn in hell and then burn in hell again, okay? Every life they have, every time they come back from, yeah.
28-year-old woman is on her way to meet a guy who she will recognize instantly, though she doesn't really know him. They used to be total strangers.
You have my brother's face.
In March of 2012, an incredible surgery was performed on 37-year-old Richard Norris. Norris had spent the last 15 years essentially living in hiding as a recluse due to the fact that his face shocked and disturbed the public. Norris had been involved in a pew-pew accident in 1997 that took away his upper and lower jaw, lips, and nose. All hope seemed to be lost for him, until the family of 21-year-old Joshua Aversano was found. Joshua had been unalived in a tragic car accident, and his family had been approached by doctors working with Richard Norris to ask if they would be willing to donate their son's face to Norris, being that both of the men's faces originally somewhat resembled each other, and the family agreed. So in 2015, the sister of Joshua came face to face finally with the man who now wears her brother's face. And she did. She reached up and kind of brushed his forehead and could only say, "Wow." Seconds later, she added, "This is the face that I grew up with."
His nose, his lips, his teeth, his jawbone, his hair, everything belonged to my brother.
How would you feel if you met someone who now had one of your relatives' faces? And what would you even say to them?
The teeth too? How? That's crazy. What would you do? That would freak me out.
Was a girl who couldn't leave her room every October 10th of the year.
Why October 10th?
This is why. So the mom, whenever the date came, she would mark it on the calendar. She would circle it. She would highlight it. Make sure that her kid was in her room with no windows and stuff.
Yeah.
She never told her kid why, right? And whenever she had school on that day, or if she had to do something else that day, she's like, "Nope, you're not allowed to leave the house." So every year, both of them would, on October 10th, they would lock themselves in a room with no windows, right? And every year, fam, you would hear someone ring the doorbell on the house.
Yeah.
Right? But the mom obviously is with the child. So she's like, "No, we're staying in this room, we're staying in this room." And as soon as midnight hits and October 11th comes,
Yeah.
the knocking, the ringing of the doorbell disappears.
Well, why that day? Like what?
Exactly. Trust me, it's building up. It's building up. So one day,
1979, a teenage girl accepts a babysitting job at an isolated home in the Minnesota woods. After putting the children to bed, she settles on the couch to watch TV, only to be startled by a phone call. She picks it up and hears heavy breathing, when suddenly a man's unsettling voice asks, "Have you checked on the children?" Nervous, she dismisses it as a prank and hangs up. 15 minutes later, the phone rings again. This time the voice asks, "Why haven't you checked on the children?" Panic sets in and she calls 911. The operator advises her to keep the caller on the line if they call back, allowing the call to be traced. Moments later, the phone rings again, and the voice snarls, "Check on the children now." Trembling, she keeps the call connected as instructed. Once more the phone rings. The operator's voice crackles through, urgent and frantic. "Get out of the house. The calls are coming from upstairs." Terrified but worried about the children, she hesitates before fleeing outside. She bolted out of the house, her heart pounding in her chest. There, a tall man stepped out of the shadows, his presence looming as he stared her down with a chilling intensity, and he asked in a cold, menacing voice, "Why didn't you check on the children?"
Is one of the most documented hauntings to exist. When LaToya Amons moved her family into a new home in Gary, Indiana, she was hopeful for a fresh start. But pretty quickly into their stay, they knew that something in this house did not want them there. Within the first month of their move, LaToya and her mother Rosa would be awoken by the sound of someone walking up their basement stairs. They placed a lock on the door leading from the basement to the kitchen, and after this, the sounds of the footsteps would escalate into violent pounding on the door. All three of LaToya's children would be tormented in this home. The youngest son had an imaginary friend that he would often find sitting on the floor of his bedroom closet. Both of the boys would claim to see an old woman lurking in their backyard. The oldest son would be knocked down by some unseen force in the bathroom. When LaToya and Rosa heard him screaming for help, they burst through the door to find something pushing on the inside of his skin like it was trying to get out. After a funeral the family attended, LaToya had some distant family staying in her home, and they witnessed LaToya's daughter levitating several feet above her bed. With nowhere to turn and without the ability to just up and leave their new home, LaToya would take her children to the doctor in a desperate attempt for help. At the doctor's office, medical staff, nurses, and a CPS caseworker witnessed LaToya's youngest son walk up a wall and do a backflip over his grandmother, landing on his feet. They even documented this event in their paperwork. Police and the CPS caseworker would accompany a priest to the house, and they reported the hauntings that they witnessed inside of the demon house of Gary, Indiana. Go listen to this week's episode of the Oddities on Elm Street podcast for the full story.
This woman escaped from prison. Everything turned chaotic. In 1995, a woman named Beyonce Hogg, once a beauty queen, was sent to a high-security prison in Arkansas for committing a serious crime. She was sentenced to life in prison. In 1996, during the prison's outdoor time, alarms suddenly rang, and all prisoners were ordered back to their cells. But one inmate, Beyonce Hogg, didn't return. She had escaped. The authorities called her dangerous and started a huge search across the state. For 3 weeks, they searched everywhere, but it seemed like she had disappeared completely. Later that year, a newly married couple moved into a house in northern Iowa. The house needed fixing, but they were excited to start their life together. Soon they noticed a horrible smell in the house that wouldn't go away. They searched for the cause of the smell and eventually decided to check the chimney. What they found was shocking. They called the police immediately, and that's how the mystery of Beyonce Hogg's escape was finally solved.
Did you know that setting aside as little as $300 from each paycheck into a max-funded IUL instead of a 401k can give you $610,000 tax-free money and will provide you with $60,000 a year tax-free in retirement? Comment IUL below if you want more information. If you're open to being a financial professional licensed in your state, please send me an email at essence@tenaciouscashflowacademy.com. Oh, hey y'all, it's me, the Money Professor. How are you? Well, I'm just, helping a client with some mortgage protection. What's mortgage protection? It's a life insurance policy that protects your family and your family's home in the event that you get sick, in a bad car accident, or just pass away before your mortgage is able to be paid off. This is the best way to keep your family and your home safe in the event that, like I said, you pass away. Mortgage protection policies are primarily term policies, and they last 10 to 30 years depending on your length of your mortgage payments. It also has the cheapest premiums, so it is extremely affordable for all homeowners, really. I personally believe everyone should know the power and benefits of having mortgage protection, as well as life insurance in general, the different kinds of life insurances that are offered, and how important it is to have for you and your family. Feel free to send me a DM to learn about more opportunities and what's available for you and your family's protection. You can hit the link in the bio, complete the application, and I'll be in touch as soon as possible. Talk to you soon. So her fat ass was in the chimney dead, stinking up the place. Anyway, you reached the end of another video. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time, baby. I do not take it for granted. You already know what to do with it. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Hit the notification bell ding so you get a notice every time your girl drops another video. Make sure you reach out to me to protect yourself, protect your family, protect your assets, honey. And if you want to make some extra money on the side and you can pass a background check. Anyway, I love y'all. Ashe.